Thank you, James. What you know about in Sweden is Zlatan Ibrahimovic and IKEA. And as a matter of fact, I met Ingvar Kamprad, the IK of IKEA, because we used to have a project on IKDC, where they try to design things that IKEA can sell. And they introduced themselves in the United States with an I and a key and an A, IKEA, so they will remember that name. I try to make you remember my name after this speech. My name is Inde. I used to be Anderson, but there are so many Andersons in Sweden. So the three brothers, we changed our name to Inde to be independent, or in the mood, or whatever. So it says here I'm a PhD, which means that I bribed the university to make me a doctor, because it was very interesting to meet Björn from ABBA, because he became also a doctor at the same time. But as a matter of fact, we were in the military service together, so every time we meet, we dress in uniform and march. I had my visual impairment during the military service, so I couldn't stay with Björn too long. And they said it might be a brain tumor, we'll see. And from there on, I knew that there were three kinds of eye doctors: bad eye doctors and good eye doctors, and Bashar al-Assad of Syria. He's the worst one. So in my country, well, of course, my grandmother is Norwegian, which I tell them all the time when I come to Norway, because then they pay me better. They are so nationalistic. They're not even members of EU, but we won't talk about Brexit here. Sweden is a very long country from north to south, and I live at the biggest lake of Sweden, which I can see from my bedroom when I use my telescope. And we have set up low vision services instead of having schools for the blind. Because when I had my visual impairment, they sent me to the school for blind women. And then they taught me Braille and how to use a white cane and blah, 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 because the teachers were blind teachers. So then I thought I could be a headmaster of a school like that and close it. So I became the headmaster of a school, started in 1884. In 1974, 90 years later, and the staff was still there who had been hired in 1884. So they worked there for 90 years. They had brush making and broom making and blah, blah, blah. So we changed that into low vision centers. So we have 33 low vision centers in Sweden with 350 people working there, or at least they are employed. The biggest low vision center in the world, I think, is the one in Stockholm. They have now 85 full-time professionals working there. Among them, 27 optometrists and occupational therapists, and low vision teachers, which we educate in Norway and in Stockholm. The requirement is that you should have a visual acuity lower than 0.3, and that you should have a referral from an eye doctor, because we think that you should have a good medical exam. But the eye doctors are only consultants to the rehab staff. So you can have all services free of charge, and the devices are free of charge. But unless you know how to cope with your visual problem, you don't like to use the devices. So I was fighting a lot with that problem myself. And I wrote in 2003 the book See Bad, Feel Good, like a therapy for myself. And I like the Italian title better. It's called Vedo male ma sono felice. It's more romantic. And it's about how to cope with your situation. What do I do when I don't see this? On the slide, I use my four times. Here it says that you have to make new friends. And the friends you have to make now is to make friends with your bad eyes. Because if you're not an expert on your eyes, you think about your eyes like you think about a Muslim before you've met a Muslim. As you might know, I worked in Middle East, so now I know there are good Muslims and terrorists. But the terrorists are so few compared to the very good people down there. And you and I have a right to be different. And I have a right to be different and take part of society and use my devices anywhere and wherever I want. Even if there's a nice lady sitting next to me, I take out my devices, and sometimes they say, "Is your vision bad?" And then I said, "No, why do you wonder?" But because you hold the paper an inch from your glasses. We say 2.5 centimeters, but it's easier to say 1 inch, right? But you can go over to the metric system, inch by inch. You have to find love in life. You need 3 things in life. You need something to do, you need someone to love, and you need a project into the future. But most of the most important thing is that you need to love yourself. And this you do by choosing a really nice family. And to have this family that, like many of you have, who have your parents here, like the family George from Wales, they will say to their kids, "You are as good now as you were before. We love you all the same." And then you should meet people in your own situation. That's why you're here. And then for the third thing, you should date only the very best professionals. Don't date anyone else. And there are good ones and bad ones, and you have to find at least 2 and see and compare their scientific background. And for the 4th, you should have good devices. I don't believe in miracles in devices, but I want to have the devices that can help me use my vision better. Here's my very good best friend, Dr. Jörgen Gustafsson, making an assessment. He has dyslexia, and he's a professor of optometry. Some people say that first you have to grieve, and after the shock, and then you have to look forward, and then everything is fine. For me, I don't like psychologists who think that way, because I think it's a lifelong process. And you must ask yourself, who am I now in relation to who I was before? And how can I accept this new situation? And 3 things you should avoid is BSG, bitterness, guilt, and self-pity. And I always tell mothers who have given their children LHON, that from now on you can take away the guilt, replace it with love. So then everything is fine. So tell yourself the truth, and step by step you can start from now and be closer and closer to reality, which means that this is the situation we have. They asked a very famous actor who was making fun of himself in a comedy how he could act like that when he was a serious cultural person. And the answer was, money is good for the nerves. So you can still be a businessman if you have low vision and try to make yourself the person you wanted to be from the beginning. A CEO of an investment company came to me and said, well, I'm the vice president now. I want to be the president, but I cannot be that because I've got the LHON, with the same visual acuity as you. And I said to him, are you crazy? Do you think with your eyes? I don't. And I became a businessman because I was working in advertising and so on to escape the vision field, but I couldn't do without it, so I came back. So, firstly, get support from this family. Secondly, find others who can be role models for you, and then date a good professional and get good devices. That's my advice. So during life, you we'd have to reconsider all the time. There are new philosophies. I read a book called Blindness, What It Does, what it is, what it does, and how to live with it, written in 1969 by Father S. Carroll in Boston. And he said, you will get 20 losses from your visual impairment in life. But what is the issue? What do I gain from that in regard to empathy and to experience and so on? You know, to meet a person without any problems in life whatsoever, how boring. You want to meet people who have survived problems. And you have to face new techniques. I learned to use my iPhone from my grandkids and from other 20-year-old visually impaired persons. And in rehabilitation, if you don't know how to use a smartphone or an iPhone with all the options that Steve Jobs from Syria gave us, you are not a rehabilitated person. You know, before we used to use open wheel tape recorders to read books. Now we have Storytel and Beatbook and so on. It's great. And you have to face new expectations. If you can not be your problem, but be your possibilities, then you can expect more things from life. Still, you have to face the fact that your vision will not be better. You will still have the possibility of traveling to see these nice stairs from Caltagirone, the headquarters of the mafia in Sicily. I asked the driver, who was on the other picture here, here he is to the right, to show me where do the mafia live. Because you go to Italy and you inaugurate different kinds of vision centers. They have 14 now in Italy. And then he took the car and he drove and he pointed in a house and said, that's where they are. It was a Catholic church. So we have in our society called LHON, I Society. We have a project called Leber X. The V shouldn't be there. And it's called Leber X because X means unknown treatment that we've heard of. It means experts that are needed. It means eccentric fixation. And it's X as in magnification. And we got £550,000 worth of development money. Oh yeah, here is my twin brother. I'm trying to make him famous because I wrote a book about eye diseases in older ages. And there's a big interest on eye diseases in elderly nowadays, because they sold 14,500 copies in Sweden only in this book. And my twin brother is so old now, he has to have reading glasses. But this book is the one I'm going to speak about. It's about called Look Forward. It was released last year, and it's written to patients and professionals. It's about LHON and how to use your vision. And the translation of the book is paid by Santera. We try to be indifferent to their products, or we cannot be bought, but if they like to translate and print our book, we are very thankful to them. And I have some copies. I'm traveling Ryanair, so I couldn't bring very many. And I want to give this as a gift from us in Sweden to your organization.
Thank you.
Russell, take care of them. And in the front cover, there's a guy with LHON. He is now an accountant at Ernst & Young, and he is full of life, and he doesn't go to church, but he goes to the gym every day. The next book is just being printed. It will be printed in two weeks. It's called Stronger Together. It's about how families can support each other. What happens to the marriage when someone gets a visual impairment? Of course, my wife already knew that I had a visual impairment, and even then she married me. Or it was the opposite around, I married her. You know, love is blind. That's why everyone closes their eyes when they kiss. Check that out. It's evidence-based. And here are my students in the Middle East at one of the exams. And we have a center there called Vision Training Center. And it's very interesting to see how different cultures react to visual impairment. And here I'm sitting with 3 ladies. I don't know if they are blonde, brunettes, or black-haired because they cover their hair. Anyway, they are very skilled occupational therapists, and we talk about eccentric viewing. So eccentric viewing is about what you do when you don't have a macular function. What we have tried to develop is a new website called xfix.se, where you can analyze and train to use different methods in order to use peripheral parts of the retina. But it's very important that you use a part of the retina as close to the central scotoma as possible. And if you have a Goldman chart, you know the design of the scotoma. If you have a scotoma that's 10 degrees or less, then you can use an optical device with 10 to 11, 12 times of magnification. The density of cones in the macular is 180 to 200,000 per square millimeter. Outside 10 degrees, it's only 6,000 to 8,000 cones per square millimeter. And in the outer edge of the retina, it's 15 to 18,000. So when something comes into the retina from the periphery, you will notice it because the vision is a little bit better out there. And then you have a fixation reflex that you learn from childhood to look at the things that you see. And you also look at the things you hear and smell. But now when your vision is more or less gone in the macula, then you have to make the other senses trust their own impressions. So you have to know who is speaking because you have to have a memory for speech better than the one you had before when you can rely on the control organ, vision. But here, You have to see where is the best part to look above or below the scotoma. If you look below the scotoma, you lift your eyes 8 to 10 degrees, where I have my preferred retinal locus, which is bullshit talk by researchers, but they like to be famous by finding interesting abbreviations. But we have another abbreviation that's better that the patients would understand. We call it best retinal area, which the abbreviation is BRA, that most women use nowadays. Not when I was young. But so the best retinal area for this person is below the scotoma. So you lift the scotoma 8 degrees up, and then you have to keep it there. In order to keep it there, you have to use fixation lines. So you look at the text, and you don't see it. And then you lift your eyes up, you add magnification, and then you can use the lower density of cones outside of the scotoma. At FAR, the Israeli optometrist Adi Kramer invented this chart to look at 5 in the middle. And you can see in what direction, according to the clock watch, shall I look at 3 o'clock, 12 o'clock or so to see the 5 in the middle as good as possible. And we developed a BNP test, or in English, a BRA test, to see where should I look. And we give the patient a whiteboard pen to put the scotoma on this small whiteboard. We call it low tech, it's no computers involved. To see where should I put my scotoma to see the symbol or the letter in the middle. So this person puts it up to the right. And in order to keep the eye in this BRA position, this eccentric viewing position, I've been told that eccentric fixation is when strabismic kids look to the side. And eccentric viewing is the better professional term for this. So I look up at the line over the words and move the text, because then the fixation reflex will not make the vision or the eyes look on the next word coming, because then you don't see it. Then it falls into the scotoma again. And of course, you can use movie text by moving the letters yourself. But this is the small lesson in eccentric viewing, which is a big of a difference when you are supposed to find new ways of using your residual vision. And when I look at people, I look 12 degrees to the left on their right ear. And when I take my bike and travel in an environmentally good way, I look 20 degrees up. And then the correction of the eyes change. But that leads too far to talk about now. So I just want to conclude my small talk and say that you're welcome to come over to the metric system so we understand each other inch by inch. And thank you very much for inviting me. Russell, you write very long emails, and I hope that means that we will have a long friendship, because comparing and exchanging ideas and missions is very interesting. I was in 1964 living with Frank and Marjorie Cook in Shirley, Croydon, and I thank her very much for teaching me some English so I could talk to you today. She also told me, "Oi kortska koilebörden put in en wickham wire, but a packed ois are letting go, you say." But you don't understand Cockney, do you? And we have a newsletter in our association, and the newsletter is called "You Are Not Alone." I don't know if that applies in English, but we think it's great to meet others in the same situation, because we are much stronger together, as the new book is called. I just want to talk about, at the end, the 4 websites that you don't have to enter. Because if you're not interested in your own situation, skip it. But if you are, you can look at xfix.se, which has an English version of it. Soon it will come in English and Italian, but you never know about the Italians. LHON is our website.se, which also has some English things going, especially 2 or 3 films with English subtitles. One is called Life Returns. It's an interview with 2 young people, and it's very heartbreaking. And she is very beautiful, and he is a very nice person, and he's a president of our society, Hampus Vennerdal. And then you have my website, which is called Indenova, and if you like to be a professional into low vision services, you should enter Vision Me. And me doesn't mean me, it means Middle East. So it's a result of the big EU project we had down there. So it's even good for the Middle East to be a member of EU. They have a special program called Tempus between English and Middle East universities. And one of the members there from Aston University in Birmingham, Andrew Miller, is a great optometrist teaching down there. We have written a book called Manual in Vision Rehabilitation that can be provided through that website, and also a web course in optometric rehabilitation. This was not everything I could tell you today, but this was the time they gave me, and I'm very proud of being invited here to England and speak your language. Men om ni vill så kan jag prata svenska så att ni förstår vad jag säger, och då kan jag, but you don't understand Swedish. You have to learn that. It's a marvelous language. You know what had happened when the Vikings came to England in 1066, and the Englishmen have spoken Swedish. Then they could have made friends. Now I'm very sorry for what they did. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kriste. Time is running quite tight today, so Kriste is going to be with us the rest of the afternoon and this evening. So I'm sure some people are going to have lots of questions, and please address them to Kriste directly. If there are things that we think we need to share, we'll try and compile those and get them out to you as well. As for my long emails, well, you know, why say something in 10 words when 1,000 will do just as well? That's the way I look at it. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce